Okay, in this tutorial we are going to learn how to wrap text around picture boxes and around other shaped images. This is a really common thing that you see in magazines and all kinds of publications where text is wrapped around pictures. It's quite easy to do, and it does create good fluidity in the page, especially if the pictures are in irregular shape. So we're also going to look at how we can use white space on the page to create a bit more style and interest if that's the kind of thing you're after. So I'm going to click on my mag layout, and this is where we left it. We put a text box on the front page and we formatted all of our text, and on the left hand side of the double page spread we put it into 3 columns with 10mm gutter between them. So what I want to do is, because this page is very text heavy, I want to pull another picture onto this page, but I don't quite know where to place it, and that's partly part of the reason is because this page has got no columns set into the text. So I'm going to go W so I can see my guides, and then I am going to do exactly the same with this text box here. Just going to pull it out to the edge there. I'm going to do exactly the same with this text box here as I did with this one on the left hand side. I'm going to put it into 3 columns with a 10mm gutter. I can't just go the easy route, the quick shortcut up here to change the column numbers, because I want to change the gutter as well. So that means I've got to go to Object, Text Frame Options, and there I can set it at 3 columns and with a gutter of 10mm, which is exactly the same as the left-hand page. If I click OK, that means, and I go W, that means you can see all the columns across both double page spreads are the same size with the same gutter, and that's the kind of consistency you want with all your features. They should be similar, well, they should be the same width columns with the same size gutters. You can break this rule, but it is quite difficult if you break it to make it look good, and it's probably something that quite experienced people do that. So if it's all the one feature, it really needs to be the same columns and the same gutter. If it's two different features, you might get away with it in a different way. But because we're doing this all as one double page spread, I'm going to keep them all the same for now. I may change the columns because I decide I want a bit more white space. But for now, I'm going to leave them as they are, all the same, and see how it looks. So my columns are all the same. I'm going to pull a picture box on the page, on the right hand side of the page to work with. So I'm going to go back to my tools panel. I'm going to click on rectangle frame tool, which is my picture box, and I'm going to draw a picture roughly where I want it, which is in the top right hand corner of the page. And part of the reason I've chosen to put it there is because I have a big picture here on the left hand side, and I don't want to put another picture right next to it. I want some copy in the middle to break them up. And so to keep the symmetry of the page, I'm going to put it over the right hand side of the page. So I'm clicked on my picture box there. I can do Command D or Control D or File and Place to get my image. Here's what I'm going to pull in. The image is there. I'm just going to go straight up there to fill frame proportionately, and that has filled out my frame with the full picture. So right now the text is going behind this picture box, and that's because I pulled the text box on the page before the picture box. Unlike the picture down here on the bottom right, where I pulled the picture in first and then I drew a text box, and that's why the text is going on top of that picture, but it's going behind that picture. Either which way, whether the text is going behind or in front of it, I don't want that. I want it to wrap around both of these images. So the top image is the easier one to do because it's just a straightforward square box. Although I've got it on the top right hand of the page, if I just pull it down into the middle of the page so it becomes easier to see, and I zoom in a bit using my zoom tool, and there you can see it a bit more clearly. I can see the edges, and I can see that the copy is going behind it. You can see the words are disappearing behind the picture and there's no spaces around the edge. So These 4 boxes up here are your text wrap tools. It's on no text wrap right now. You need to be clicked on the image or picture or object that you want the text to wrap around. You don't want to be clicked on the text box because it will then put the wraparound around the text box. You want it to put the wraparound around the actual image or picture. So I'm clicked on my picture. If I just go and change it to wraparound bounding box here, it has wrapped the text around, but it's not very even, and some sides, the bottom has got some space, the side hasn't, and the top hasn't. And really, I want white space around it all. I don't want it to be tight to the edge like that and different on the bottom as it is on the top. So to do that, I have to go into my text wrap box, my menus, to change the settings. So this quick tool up here is not always exactly what you want because it doesn't set the measurements. It doesn't allow you to set any measurements. It's just a shortcut. So text wrap is in Window, Menu, and text wrap, and then the box pops up, and this is what I'm working with. So here I have my basic setting that I put it on up there, wrap around bounding box. Underneath, these 4 boxes allow me to change the offset on the top, on the bottom, and on each side of the picture. If that link is broken, it means it won't make all the settings the same. So if you click on that and make the link a chain, it means if you change one of these, they will all change. I don't know if you can see, I might just zoom in a little bit closer. You can see there that as I click these, there is a box, another space going out around the whole picture, like that. So I can make as much space around the text wrap as I want. And if I come off it and click W, you can see how much space it's putting around. You might not want all that space, so you might take it down to 4 or 3 even, depending on what you want and where your picture is going to go. So I'm just going to click back on my W. I'm just going to minimize my text wrap. I want my picture to go up the top here. So I'm on the top selection tool here, so that's how I pick it up and I move it. I don't move it using the center circle, the hand, because that moves what's inside the picture. I click outside the center of the picture and then I can move the picture to wherever I want. So I've set it up the top here. I've got a 3mm wrap, and it's going around the whole picture box, the 3mm wrap. But I don't actually need it. I only need the picture, I only need the 3mm gap. I need the wrap to be around the whole box, but I only need the offset, the gap, to be on the bottom, because that's the only area where the text directly sits next to the picture. On the left-hand side, there's a gutter separating them, and on the top and the right-hand side, it's the edge of the page, so there is no copy. So it doesn't really make any difference right now. It's fine like that. But if I wanted to change it and only have it on the bottom, I would have to break that link and put these back to 0, put the top back to 0, put the left back to 0, and put the right back to 0. And that means when you click on the tick, you can see the border is now, the offset is only around the bottom of the picture. It's not around these sides. You don't have to do that. In this case, it wasn't necessary, but should you wish to do that at some point, that's how you do it. You either connect or break this link in the middle of the text wrap box to allow you to change them separately or all at once. So I've put a text wrap on that picture and I can see there's a nice gap underneath and the text is running around it. This picture underneath is not quite so straightforward. It does have a white background. If I was to bring that picture to the front, you would see, in fact, I'll show you, I'll put the text to the back of the page, Object, Arrange, Send to Back. And by sending that text to the back of the page, it hasn't made any difference to our picture up here because we have a text wrap around it, so it doesn't really matter whether the text is set to go behind or in front. But down here we haven't put a text wrap on, So if I send the text to the back, you can see the true picture, and it's a square picture with a white background. There's nothing else in the background. It's not a cutout, but the background is plain white. And when the background is so plain on a picture, InDesign can detect the edges inside the picture to a degree, though you do need to fiddle about with it a bit. And that's what we want it to do. But we do want the text to run over this bounding box, not underneath it as it is doing now. So I need to bring the text back to where it was. So I'm going to Control Z, and that is where we were, where the text was running in front of the picture. But this all takes quite a bit of practice to get the hang of, and you need to practice doing this in order to really understand how the layers work and what difference it makes to text wraps on the page. So practice is the key with figuring all this stuff out, and being a bit, if you want to get a bit quicker at it, you have to practice pulling lots of pictures on pages, different types of pictures, some with cutouts, some with plain background. It all depends. So for this picture, you can see, because the text is running in front of it, that when I click on this picture, it doesn't allow me to click on the picture. It's just clicking on the text box because it's at the front. So when I want to access pictures that are, or objects rather, that are underneath other objects, if I hold down Command and click, or Control, sorry, if you're on a PC, if I hold down Control and click on the picture, you can see it's grabbed it now. It's gone beneath the text box and it's grabbed it. And we can see that because the edges of it are visible. So now I'm going to put my text wrap. Now I have clicked on the picture, I'm going to put my text wrap on. I don't want bounding box. I do want to wrap around an object shape, and if I click on this one, it brings up the outer edges of the box, but still the text will run over those outer edges. But for us to see, it's bringing them up. And you can see down here, I've got a menu that's become active on the text wrap, the contour options. If I use that drop down menu and select Detect Edges, you can see that InDesign has made an effort to detect the edges in this picture because it's on a plain white background. So you can see it's not got it quite right, and I'm going to have to fiddle with it to get it quite right. But you can see it's made a good start on wrapping that text around the girl's arm and around her head. However, you can also see text has appeared in the middle of her body, which you wouldn't want. It's appeared here just under her ear, and it's far too tight to her head, and it shouldn't go all the way down to the bottom there, because the text becomes unreadable when it goes over such a narrow space. So in order for us to get close to that and get rid of all of that, firstly I'm going to have to zoom in so I can really see what I'm doing, like that. And you can see the pale blue lines. They are the edges that InDesign is detecting, and you should be able to just see them all here, all of these lines. So I need to get to these lines and change them a bit so it takes all this copy out of the middle of her. So to do that, I have to click on the picture. I'm going to click off. I need to click back on it. So I'm going to have to Control, Command, Shift. I'm on the picture. I double click on it. Hasn't done it, sorry. Make sure I'm doing this right. Back up here on my top selection tool, I need to click on the picture box, hold down Command, Control. I've clicked on the picture box. If I double click, I've gone into the inside, into the contents of it. And then I need to go down to this tool here underneath my selection tool, which is my direct selection tool. If I click on that, as soon as I click on that, you should be able to see that there are points that have come up inside all of these edges, and I need to pull these points out so that they in and out, so here I'm going to pull these all in, and it's going to take, I'm going to pull all these edges. These are edges that InDesign is detecting, and they're not right, as you can see. but it depends on the composition of pictures as to what way it will detect the edges. But you can go in, as I'm doing now, and manually shift the edges about so that it pushes the copy out. So I've pushed the copy out of the middle of our body there. If I just scroll up, I also want to push it out here, because I can't just use the straightforward text wrap option for this, because it's not a straight lines, it's not a bounding box. So I just need to go in, and it's quite fiddly, this. You might want to be quite a bit closer up to it. And I'm just going to go along. There's another point that I can pull out, and it's pushing, as you can see, the letters away. And I'm going to pull it out quite far here because I don't want it to put letters. I don't want it to put any copy in. And you can see as I'm doing this, it's pushing the copy around all the spaces in the picture. So I pull them all out like that, like that. So it's not there. You can see it's detecting our hands, but I don't want it to go around our hands in the case of this picture because our hand is in the middle of our body. So I have pulled them all out there, so there's no copy around there. It's still very tight here. I'm thinking the letters are very tight to the picture. So I'm just going to pull the edges of the picture out a bit. Around her face, you can see the letters are far too close to her head, so overlapping slightly, some of them. So you just grab whichever edges you can until it comes out. It's not an exact thing, you have to fiddle about with it quite a lot. If you wanted to use a picture, if you wanted to do a picture in InDesign first and cut it out completely, or you can cut it out completely in InDesign, but this is actually quite a quick way of doing it once you get the hang of it. You're just pushing out the edges. I'm going to push them out here to get rid of that copy there. Just move that down, scroll up. I don't want it so close to her head there, so I'm going to move out until I get it looking something like I want it to look. I don't want it to come right close to her head. I want to leave a decent amount of space. And as I do it, it pushes the text around, and you've got to make sure that you push it all out as much as you can. Now, if I change the columns on this page, this will also change the look of it, so I might have to go back and change other things. So it's all a matter of fiddling about with things until you get them just how you want them. I want to bring that out there, so I am looking for an edge. Yeah, that will take that out for me, like that. So how does that look? Not good there. Some letters have squashed back into her. Some of the copy, so I've got to keep doing this till there's no spaces. Do the same there. I don't want any copy down the bottom here because I think it's too narrow and it will make it unreadable. So I'm pulling the edges right out here. So it takes a bit of practice, that, and it's quite fiddly, but it's good practice to get to use InDesign. And if I click off the picture now, go back on my top tool, click off the picture, Control 0 takes me out again, press W, that's how she looks. Now, I think she's too tight still there, and I'm not sure whether it works with this column here. So this is the fiddling about I'm going to have to do to get it to look the way I want it to look. So I also think that there's too much text on these pages, and I want some more white space. So a way for me, after I have got some idea of my text wraps and what I'm going to do with them, I might want to change my columns to get a bit more white space. So I'm just going to go back on my W so I can see. And I'm not going to do anything more with that picture yet because I'm going to change the columns and see what difference that makes. And I probably will have to go back in and pull some more of those points out. But for now, I'm going to change the columns. So here we have 3 columns. I'm thinking we could maybe do 2 columns and put a column of white space two wider columns of text and a column of white space. So I'm clicked on that, so I can go to my shortcut now because I don't need to change my gutters, and I just take it down to two columns, and I'm going to push them right back. So there is one column, guide column's worth here, and a gutter of white space. I can do the same on this page, so they're the same. So I take this text box down to two columns and I move it in one whole column, one whole guide column and a gutter. And I know that they're all exact, that each one of these columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, I know they're the same width because I've taken them in by exactly the same amount on both pages, and I've used my guides underneath to help me with that. And also I know the gutters are the same, so I know they are now the same size. So if I click on W, I now like the way it comes round her head a bit more because the gutter in the columns has changed it. It's still too tight here, so I'm going to have to go back in and fiddle with that. Up here, however, I don't think this looks right anymore. It's too narrow here. I can solve that in different ways. I'm just going to put my guides back on. I can bring this picture right in, like so. But I don't really like that either because it's a lot of text here. So I can just pull it out a bit into the column if I want. And then I've got to remember I didn't have a text wrap on that side of it. So I've got to go back into my text wrap box and put an offset around the left hand side. So I'm going to 1, 2, and you can see it moving it 3. And now I have got a 3mm offset around the left side of this picture and the bottom, but not around the right side or the top because there's no text. And if I press W, that's what my copy is going to look like. I may not like that. I may decide to put an offset around all of them on 3, 1, 2, 3, and just move this picture into the middle of both. And I might think, oh yeah, I prefer that. Make it slightly narrower. I've got quite a bit of space on either side I can use. Put W to make sure I'm in my guides. And as you can see, I have put it, I'm just going to zoom in there so you can actually see it. I have put my picture going over the two columns, and it is lined up in the column gutter, so I know it's taking the same space out of each column. And now I have a text wrap on all sides of it. So these are all just things you can chop and change as you go along. I press W. I prefer the look of that up there now, but I can see that I'm going to have to go back and change this. I can move this picture into the center of that copy if I wish to see how that's going to look. So if I press Command and click, I can actually get hold of the picture and I can just shift it and see, do I prefer it like that? Maybe I do prefer it like that. Maybe if I'm going to have that in the center, maybe I want to make that picture a bit bigger. Like that. If I want to make pictures bigger proportionally, remember I hold down Control and Alt, or Command and Option if you're on a Mac, but Control and Alt and grab the edges and it makes the whole picture proportionally bigger or smaller. So I might prefer that. Actually, sorry, it's Shift, Control and Option does it all proportionally. If you just do Control and Option, it can do it. It can distort it slightly. Sometimes you don't notice. So, do I want the picture that big? Maybe I do. Now I need to go back into that picture and fix it round here. So these are all decisions that you need to make, and these are the ways that you do them. It is quite fiddly going in and fixing the pictures, but it can be, once you get used to it, it can be quite a quick way to do it. You can also do full cutouts in InDesign, and you can do full cutouts in Photoshop and import them straight in. So all of these things are the way that you can do them. So I'm going to push her right back up to where she was, so she's sitting on the bottom of the page. And now I'm thinking she's really too big, so I'm going to take her down. So I'm going to Shift, Option, Shift Alt Control, and I'm going to take her down like that. I can have her sitting in the middle of the page, I can have her sitting down the edge. And once I know exactly where she's going to be, once I'm happy with exactly where she's going to be, that's when I can go in and fix all the edges exactly as I want them. Because if you spend too much time doing that and then you change the design of the columns around her, you just have to keep going back into the picture and doing it. So the best thing is to figure out first exactly where you want her to be, and then do your fiddling around with the edges. Now, as I say, you can only do that option that I've showed you with her when you've got a picture which isn't a cutout, but it has got a plain background, and InDesign can detect some inside edges. So you may prefer just to get cutouts, just to either do them on InDesign or Photoshop and use them, or you can use this method. And white space, you can see if I fill that headline box out a bit more there, just put another word in, summer wow style. It takes the headline out to nearly to around the same width as the columns. Click on W, and I've got quite a lot of white space. I can also decide not to set this picture in at all. I can put it like that if I want. And because I've got white space there now, I can put a picture next to that picture because I've got something here that breaks it up. So I can do that if I wish. Take the bottom of it up a bit so it's not white. If I prefer that, I might prefer that as a look. I can push it over here, or I can cut her out as well if I want and have two cutouts on the page. You don't want to go cut out crazy because it's not a cartoon magazine, so it depends on what you're doing, but you don't want to have millions of cutouts. One cutout used properly can be very effective. So that's some different ways of fiddling about with pictures, text wraps, edges of pictures to get the kind of look you're after.